Hi, this is Kris Castro, and this is the Lead Upside Down podcast, where leaders are sharing how they are leading in non-traditional ways based on Jesus's leadership style. If you have any questions, go back to the trailer episode and that should answer them. But right now, grab your favorite beverage and settle in. If you have any questions or comments, especially if something resonates with you, feel free to go to my website, begin2shift.com, and set up a coffee and conversation meeting, and we can chat about it in more detail. All right, enjoy. Hey, everybody, this is Kris Castro, and I have my Lead Upside Down podcast guest, Rick Meekins. He and I have been friends for a very long time. I actually hired him back in 2010 to help me with my business, and then he hired me shortly after that, just kind of holistically to put everything in his life in alignment. Rick is an amazing guy. He's got a podcast too. And with lots of business and great insights. And he runs a, what would you call it? Because I know you've changed branding quite a few times, Rick. Is it consulting? In fact, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you give like a 30-second pitch about who you are, and then we'll roll right into the interview questions.
It sounds like a plan, Kris. I always love the part where you go, and I think you're thinking, yeah, I coached Rick for a little while on how to get his life back together because he was just a hot mess. I get that. I get that.
That was not the case, but go ahead.
As Kris mentioned, I'm a management consultant. My passion, I really enjoy working with companies and helping them streamline their operations, and then really building companies that stand out, that I call extraordinary. We're looking at companies that are legacy brands, so we consult for them with their operations. We do strategy work with them, helping them plan for the future, figure out what the future would look like. We do marketing for them, help them really drill down in who their customer is going to be and how to reach them, and how to get more leads, obviously. And then we do our financial management as well, and helping them not just do their books, but really understand the best way to manage their books.
Good introduction. So we will roll right in, because on top of all of that, Rick is a leader who leads upside down. And that's why I wanted him on this podcast. And also because he told me to start a podcast 4 years ago, and I just wasn't ready, too busy, lots of stuff. And when Jesus told me to do it about a week or two ago, and I put the beginnings of it together and reached out to Rick, he just laughed his head off. So thank you, Rick. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's talk about Lead Upside Down. Yep. So what does Lead Upside Down mean to you?
I always take it back to I think that people put in that box of servant leadership. The idea of the leader's role is to support your people, is to equip your people so that they can do their jobs as well as they can towards a shared vision. Everybody's working towards the same vision. Everybody has the same mission.
And on top of that, how has leading upside down affected your life and work?
I think it has made me look at my role as more of a player, and I would say more like a what do you call it? A captain on a sports team. So, despite being the captain is still a player, despite, his role, and he has to go and do his job. So it's not really about, leading, being the boss, but it's more about doing my part on the team. My role is to provide leadership. My role is to support my team, equip my team with what they need.
And when you think about helping others lead upside down, what advice would you give them?
I think the biggest thing is going to be humility. There's a lot that goes into leading upside down, because you go into your role, whatever role that is, as a leader. It's like, hey, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, et cetera, et cetera. And certainly there's some direction that's needed, but leading upside down is really about equipping your people and empowering your people and enabling them to, go out and do their very best, again, towards the same mission and vision. So if you're going down that road, you've got to really be able to sit back. But the great thing about that is that as you settle into that, you are able to really develop your own superpowers. You're able to sit back and say, you know what, I'm really good at XYZ. And then you really start, pushing, other things off to other people because it feels natural. And so it's a really, really great space. And I think the other thing that, that comes to mind is in a way, it kind of relieves responsibility, in a certain way, because you're not, trying to do all the jobs. You're not trying to take ownership of every single thing that's happening around you. You're like, okay, we're moving towards the vision, and this is your job, and hopefully you do your job to the best of your ability.
And it's funny you say that, because we both walk with Jesus very closely, and Jesus owns both of our companies. And so since we can't control anything, it's always wiser to let him control things.
Oh, yeah. There's much less stress that way, It's just like, oh, this didn't work out the way I planned. All right, Jesus, I don't know what you got going on, but let's keep moving.
Exactly. And that is a key aspect of leading upside down, is that you're not going to make normal logical decisions. You're going to ask Jesus what to do and follow and do what he says. All right, Rick. So let's talk a little bit more about leading upside down in terms of what that looks like for you, kind of in your everyday work role, in terms of surrendering control, in terms of making decisions, in terms of your family life, and just personally who you are and how you interact with people. Like, how does leading upside down intersect with all of that?
It's interesting because for me, I believe in purpose. I believe that we all have a divinely given purpose. God put us here. I'm a very cause and effect person. I have to understand why things are happening, or at least my interpretation why things are happening. And so my my purpose is first and foremost to help people become, I guess to a certain level, independent. It's like, I think about jobs, I think about, businesses and being successful, being able to, grow companies and that sort of thing. And that's how my purpose kind of manifests. And that really bleeds in everything that we do. So if you were to talk to my children, my children are going to say, yeah, my dad, he puts effort into equipping me. He doesn't try to do things for me. He doesn't necessarily even, to a great extent, try to tell me exactly what to do. My dad teaches me how to think. And then by teaching them how to think, when they get into different situations, they can say, what would dad do? What would mom do? And what is the best thing for me to do in this situation? And that's the same thing I expect, from my team. I would not want a team that I had to micromanage. I enjoy working with courageous people that are willing to just dive in and say, you know what, I did what I thought was right, and I did the best job that I could, and I am aligned with where we're going. And again, I couldn't run a team differently than that. I grew up playing sports. I played a number of different sports, and it was always my job on my team, whatever my role was, to do my role. If somebody on the team didn't do their job, if the goalie didn't do their job when we were playing soccer, the fullback or whomever, we didn't win. And so that was, that just plays through into everything that I do. It's like, okay, we have teams. Everybody on the team has to do their spot, has to do their role. My job as a leader is to equip them. My job as a leader is to educate them. My job as a leader is to encourage them. Go out and do great things. I can't do the things that the people on my team do. They do amazing things. And I'm just like, wow, we did that. Oh, that's so awesome. I remember at one point, as a consulting firm, we were basically a construction management firm for a little while, and it was just like, wow, the team is just out there crushing it, and we're making these things happen. And my job is to lead. My job is to make sure they have the things they need to have. Now, I want to just kind of segue a little bit, because you know one of the other things that you touched on, Kris, was that there's a greater need for trust. And this was a very, very powerful lesson I needed to learn, because in 2020 we had a client walked out on us, with a huge bill, and I couldn't pay, the team, and I couldn't pay my bills, and it was horrible. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, you never want to be in a position where you can't pay your regular bills, but when you can't pay the people that you're supposed to be taking care of, that's much worse. And God dealt with me on that, and he was just like, you know what, Rick, you fester in this for a little while, because I know that you got this. And then after, I was like at the end of my rope, he's like, well, it's not your job to take care of these people. It's my job. Okay. You just do your role, you do your part, and I've got the rest of this, and so people have moved on from our company, as a result of that. But I still have great relationships with many of those people, and it's amazing. And, we did not go out of business, although, I probably could have thrown in the towel. We've got great people that are working with us now, and I absolutely love working with them. And God has taught me to just sit back and do my job. He'll do his job. Everybody on the team will do their job. And together we build an extraordinary company.
And that's, again, a perfect example of leading upside down, because most people in your situation would be pulling their hair out. They would be stressing.
I did. Can't you see? Look.
Yes. And what's really interesting for those of you that don't know is I'm actually part of Rick's company too. I've been working for Rick for many, many years, mostly in the editing fashion. I just edit everything and make sure it looks good or sounds good before it actually goes to the client. I've done other roles within the company. So I've had a really interesting backseat view of how Rick runs his company. And I know he leads upside down because of the way he manages his people and the way he runs things. And that story he was telling you about, I was part of the team. And I remember when he reached out to the team and he said that payroll is going to be, take a little while, or I'm trying to find the money, or whatever, client X didn't pay me. I remember reaching out to Rick and sending him a verse and basically saying to him, it's okay. Jesus has got this. And I wasn't concerned about the money, because Jesus has been dealing with me for a very long time about trusting him with finances. And I've gotten to a really good, secure place about that. So I was not much affected at all by it. And so it was really neat to watch Rick walk through that pruning process with Jesus. And to also be able to encourage him through it. And that's the thing about leading upside down, is you know who your people are in really difficult circumstances. You don't go to the people that are going to cut you down. You don't go to the people that are going to rip you apart. You go to the people that are going to encourage you through it. And Rick, I know you have a really nice circle of people, as do I, in those situations.
Absolutely. You couldn't do it without them. Couldn't do it without them.
Absolutely. Well, what else do you want to share with whoever's watching and listening about leading upside down? What other stories do you want to share about how you've done that on a regular basis, and how Jesus has really been teaching you to lead upside down the way he did when he was on earth?
It's interesting, because as we gain reach, as a company, and as we've reached before, one of the things that just in my thinking, I look at the idea that Jesus started with 12 people, and these weren't 12 people that were educated, qualified, had all of the XYZ certifications in order to just hang out with Jesus, in reality. And the Bible doesn't really talk about it a lot, but I imagine there were lots of conversations, lots of times when he was sitting down with them and just talking through, I guess what we call life, or the importance. He talked about loving people and how to treat people and all that good stuff. And it's as a result of his work, he was willing to, he himself, of course, was willing to sacrifice himself, for all of us, of course. But at the same time, his other 11 disciples were willing to go out and carry his message to the point of their own death. You know what I mean? And they faced it. It wasn't as though it was a secret that, Christians were being captured and murdered. It was to the point where, I've heard stories where they would say that, Christians would become Christians and they would get baptized right away before they would be killed, for being a Christian. It's just like, that's amazing. And so, as a person that's purpose driven, as a person that's committed to, a larger picture, I want to invest in my team in the same way. We've got, people that come with, great skill sets and all of that, but we need to I think I feel like my job is really to do that educating and that inspiration and that equipping to help my team members to be ambassadors of what we're doing, because there's no way I by myself, can reach the volume of people that we need to reach. And I'm not saying that, I want all the sales in the world. That's not what I'm saying. But what we want to do in the next 13 years is to create 1 million jobs. And again, it's not my ego thing. This is something where it's like, okay, this is how we serve the world. This is how we serve the globe. We create jobs within our own business. We work with companies to help them create stable businesses so that they can hire people, and then of course we help business owners just be stable, and so that they can be self-sufficient. And that's really that same thinking, I believe, that Jesus had. He started with a few people, and those few people were able to, go out in different directions and share that vision that Jesus had. And I love that Jesus always talked about, his vision. This is why I'm here. This is not why I'm here. And I love when he was headed back towards Jerusalem, he's like, they say he set his face like flint. It's just like, wow, that's huge. You know what I'm saying? And like nothing was going to deter him. He was just going to go in that direction. And that's another thing. It's like when we went through COVID, when things were happening, I know that we as leaders were really being leaned on. It's like, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? How are we going to feed our kids, et cetera, et cetera? And we had to have those answers, and the thing that has really been pressing on me in recent times is the idea that, leadership is more than a role, which, really isn't new, but it's also a responsibility, because not everybody's willing to do that. Not everybody's willing to, make that sacrifice. Not everybody's willing to eat last, but it's also a privilege, because people follow you voluntarily, and we have to honor that, as we lead upside down. We've got to understand that. We've got to recognize that people have choices, and at this point, people have global choices. They can go literally work for anybody, anywhere in the world at this point, and so it is a great privilege to work with the people that I work with. It is a great privilege to inspire them, and that they tell the stories, and that those stories, perhaps ripple, in other places. I've had people that work with me whose children like literally grew up, during the time that they were here. It's just like I literally signed college what do you call it, college loan documents for one of my employees, for one of the people that work for me, for a child that was in like 6th grade when she started working for me. And it's just like amazing. It's absolutely amazing to be able to touch people like that, touch lives like that. And I just find it such a privilege. I think the other thing that goes through my mind is the idea that, God thought enough of me to say, here, Rick, I'm giving you these children of mine, to lead. Here's a vision that I have for you. This is what I want you to do, and here's the children, and you do your best with them. I've got you though. And he always says stuff is going to happen. You've got the storms and this and that and this and that, but we don't hear that part when we start out. But we go through it, and I would never tell you. I would be the first person to tell you that there has been no storm that I've gone through that I haven't learned. Learned something. I might have had to go through the storm several times, admittedly, but there's been nothing that I've gone through that I haven't been able to say, you know what, I've grown as a result of this. When I had my first business, it was a restaurant, and we got our first loan, and the contractors came in and they're doing their work, and I'm 27 years old, I think it was. Never did anything in construction or anything like that. Had no idea what I was doing. And the second loan check that was supposed to come didn't come on time. And the contractors just walked out. I'm devastated. And I can laugh about that now because, it's really not that bad. It's frustrating. These things happen. This happens in big construction projects. For whatever reason, it never goes as smoothly as we would like. But we learn to trust. Learn to trust that God's vision for us is bigger than we even understand. God doesn't give us that end zone. He doesn't give us all those parts and pieces because probably would scare the crap out of us.
Yes, that's so true. One of the things I learned in my ministry leadership class, which is a seminary class that I took last term, they went through and we read several books about leadership. And in one of the books, they made the point that your people have to be prioritized over the tasks. However that looks, your people have to be more important than profit. Your people have to be more important than X. Like they went through a list of things.
Yeah.
And you really do that. I mean, I'm again part of the team, so I'm in on all the back stuff, and we meet as a team twice a month generally, and the team is global, so like all the time zones, and we all have different responsibilities, and we're all different faiths, different backgrounds, we're just very diverse team, but we get along so well. And it's because we all come to the table with respect and value for each other, regardless of what we believe or think. And we treat each other well. And it's really neat because like when the India team is talking about the India festivals and those things, even though we don't believe the same thing, we can still celebrate. And we'll send them like, hey, have a great whichever celebration it is. And when I talk about my seminary classes, they're like, oh, that's fantastic, Kris, whatever. And that is a healthy environment for being able to lead upside down. And I think it's because you lead upside down that we have a healthy environment.
Yes. I feel really privileged. I actually love that, the diversity that we have, and learning about I've enjoyed learning about the different festivals, with the different faiths, and beginning to understand how they celebrate. I was really close with Ramadan this year, and the festival around that, because a lot of our developers are Muslim. And it's just like, we have to, we can do meetings at certain times, because there's prayer and this and that. And then they have EID, which is kind of like Thanksgiving, and it's just like, okay, you're going to go be with your family for a day or two, so you're going to be out. But it's really cool. One of our developers took a trip. I didn't get the details of it, but it was he took a spiritual trip, and was gone for like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like, I learned about these things, and it's amazing, and even within the Protestant faith, it's like we have people in like Latin America and the Philippines in particular, and their celebrations are the joke I said to them is like, when we Americans, we're gonna have a family festival. If we get an email, about work, we're probably gonna stop and go in the bathroom and take care of that email. But these guys, they're just gone. Nothing's gonna happen, And so as a company, we have to just adjust for that. We have to plan for these things. We have to communicate. And it's been just such a growing opportunity. And I've always reflected that back to Jesus wasn't prejudiced. He wasn't. I always kind of think that exchange with the Samaritan woman, when he's asking her for something to drink, she's like, "Oh, you're asking a Samaritan for something to drink," and it's such a great, I don't know, free exchange that he has with this woman. I thought it was, this is the example, and this is where, I really want to be able to live my life, with that level of freedom that Jesus represented. Yes, he had great passion, for his work, and he had great passion, for his purpose, and I absolutely love that, and I absolutely live my life for that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Christians feel like if they're going to intersect their faith and work, they've got to be all salesy with Jesus, and that's like so not the case. Jesus can sell himself. Like, that's what I tell people. Jesus can sell himself. I just get to show up and be Jesus the way I believe I need to be in representing him. And then if Holy Spirit wants to touch their heart and start, drawing them to him, that's Jesus's job. I just get to be part of the process. If it happens, and if it doesn't, I just get to be friends and love them and hang out with them and just enjoy them. So it's just a really being a believer in today's world could be difficult depending on where you are and what's going on around you. But if you show up and you be like Jesus and you lead like Jesus, it's okay to just be authentically you, because who's in charge of your life? Jesus is, not me. Jesus
Absolutely.
is in charge of my life. And so I'm just going to be me, and you're just going to be you. Well, do you have any
authentically though,
Go ahead.
I think that's I think learning how to be authentic is really, really important, and this again, this goes back to that humility, to sit back and say, you know what, I can't do everything. I don't know everything. Everything's not going to go the way that I planned just because that's what I prayed for, et cetera, et cetera. But, really being able to sit back and appreciate the gifts that God gives us. I am not good at, some of the details, some of the details that we do with the company. Somebody sent me a social media post today and I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And I got like 2 emails from my team, thankfully, that said, hey, there's a mistake here and a mistake there. I was like, oh my gosh. See, that's why Kris is here. That's not my area. And I don't play in that playground. I'll skim, but I'm a strategy guy. I'm looking at the big picture. I'm looking at how all the parts and pieces work together to architect a business. And that's where I play. And that's it. God didn't gift me with those other things. Design, are you kidding me?
And that's why it's always good to have a couple of eyes, because I go through the last pass to make sure that I get to catch everything that somebody else didn't catch, right? I mean, it's just, let's go through a couple of rounds. Nobody's perfect. And when we make mistakes, the other really great thing about your team, Rick, our team, you always give me a hard time about saying it's your company, where it is
I
your
do.
company.
I do.
It is your company. God's company, your company. We're on your team. But when we make mistakes, any one of us, we get along so well that it's like, all right, let's just fix it. Like, how do we fix it? There's no backbiting. There's really very little complaining amongst us. And we just show up as a team. And when somebody has an issue, like somebody else will jump in. It's just, and you've had people for a long time on your team and people who have left and come back. I mean, it's been really fun to go, oh my gosh, look who it is. It's been 3 years. Like, it's been super fun to see people
Yep.
come and go.
Yep. Yep. And again, it's a privilege. It really is. You know, it's I think I can say, you know, it's validating in a way that I'm putting my trust in God. And things don't always look the way that I expect, you know, and you know, certain prayers don't get answered right away. But at the same time, you know, you know, I'll use, you know, the sports analogy. I don't lose. You know, there aren't, you know, I might get knocked down, you know, I'll get knocked down, but you know, we get back up and we keep going, you know. I think one of the cool things about, you know, the team is, you know, they also allow me to be transparent sometimes when I get frustrated. You know, they listen, and they have many times, you know, provided the counsel. You know, people have, you know, just you know, ring me up, say, Rick, can we talk? You know, and it's like, hey, you know, such and such going on in the company, you know, something I don't like, or I'm being treated a certain way, or you know, whatever it is, and it's like, all right, let's figure this thing out. We had this is where Kris was really godsend. We had a couple of employees that were not getting along a few years ago. One employee was more senior, and she was trying to provide direction to the, you know, I don't want to say more junior person, I guess technically, but she was trying to provide direction to another woman on the team. The other woman on the team was saying, okay, well, this is how we do it. And so the first one was getting upset. She's just like, you know what, I'm saying this thing to her, and she's giving me feedback and this and that and this and that. And I recognized that we're talking about a personality. You know, it was like they have different personalities. They look at the world, you know, differently, and they didn't understand that, you know, right away. And so Kris put together a training for the team on the Myers-Briggs type indicators, and we gave everybody the MBTI quizzes, so they were able to get their personality types. Went through the training, and then everybody has this aha moment. It's just like, oh, she's just very analytical and just trying to help me understand, you know, the process as it was before, so I could make sure that I'm making an informed decision. She wasn't pushing back and questioning me, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, wow.
That was a
And
fun
that's
workshop
been,
to
you know, a
put
really
together.
important part of what's that?
I said that was a fun workshop to put together for everybody.
That was a great workshop. We got to do that again, actually. Um, Sylvia is really into that, which is really cool as a marketer. But anywho,
Well, as we wrap up, Rick, why don't you go ahead and just kind of give some closing statements about leading
okay,
upside down?
leading upside down. As I said before, you know, I think that you know, it's a different approach to leadership. You know, it's not. I don't know that it's an approach for everyone. But I think for me, it's foundational. I wouldn't choose a different approach. It allows me to do the things that I love to do. It allows me to work with people that can bring their A game. You know, they know what they're doing and they want to do it, and they, you know, see the vision and they want to be part of that. And I know I've said, you know, the vision a number of times, but I mean, in reality, that is a lot of time the rallying point. You know, you look at, you know, the NFL. You know, these guys all have the goal of being the best in the world. You know, they have the vision of, you know, holding that Super Bowl trophy. And if people on the team don't have that same vision, they can't be part of the team. You know what I mean? And so it's the same thing with wherever we go. Our leaders need to have a vision for us to follow, so that we can all go together to accomplish whatever that goal is. And it's an amazing privilege. And I'll say that 100 times. It's an amazing privilege to be a leader, to have people that are willing to follow. It's an amazing responsibility to make the decisions and allow people to trust and lean on you. And I think it's been really rewarding, on a spiritual level. I really love how I've been able to look at Jesus' life and just see how he led and really reflect that in the way that I do the things that I do.
Well, thank you again so much for being on the podcast. Thanks for sharing your lead upside down life. We appreciate it. So for the rest of you that are watching, please share this and enjoy it. I'll be posting things fairly regularly. So keep up with what we're doing. And if you have any questions or concerns or want to chat, just go to my website, begintoshift.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for hanging out and enjoying the Lead Upside Down podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember, wherever you are, you can lead upside down too, just like Jesus did. Feel free to reach out to me if you want more information or if you think I can serve you in some way. Just go to my website, begintoshift.com, and click on the coffee and conversation icon and set that meeting up. Have a fantastic rest of your day.